March 14, 1943, 4:23 a.m., Amsterdam, Netherlands. Gestapo officers kick down the door of a small apartment on Plantage Middenland. They've received a tip. A young woman living alone. Suspicious activity. Neighbors report hearing children's voices at odd hours. The officers climb the stairs. Boots echoing. They reach the second-floor apartment. Knock. No answer. They kick the door open. Inside, a 19-year-old woman stands in her kitchen. Pregnant. 7 months. She's making breakfast. The officers search the apartment. 1 bedroom. 1 kitchen. 1 bathroom. No children. No evidence. They're about to leave when one officer notices something. The ceiling in the bedroom. A trapdoor. He pulls it open. A ladder drops down. He climbs up into the attic and finds 13 Jewish children staring back at him. Ages 4 months to 8 years. Hidden, silent, terrified. The officer looks down at the young woman. What is your name? Henriette Pimentel. And these children? She doesn't answer. She doesn't need to. The Gestapo knows exactly what these children are, and they know exactly what happens next. Henriette Pimentel was born November 17, 1876, in Amsterdam. Jewish family. Her father ran a small textile business. Her mother taught Hebrew school. Henriette grew up speaking Dutch, German, and Yiddish. She was educated, intelligent, capable. By the time she turned 25, she was running the family business. Her father had died. Her brothers had moved away. She managed the accounts, handled the clients, kept the business afloat through economic downturns and market crashes. In 1926, she founded a crèche, a daycare center, for working mothers in Amsterdam's Jewish quarter. It wasn't charity, it was necessity. Jewish women worked. They needed somewhere safe to leave their children during the day. Henriette provided that. The crèche grew. By 1940, it was caring for 60 children daily, located across from the Hollandsche Schouwburg Theater, a beautiful building. 3 stories, large windows, a garden in back. The children loved it. Then came May 10, 1940. Germany invaded the Netherlands. The Dutch army surrendered after 5 days. The occupation began. At first, nothing changed. The Germans were polite, professional. They issued new regulations. Jews had to register, had to carry identification cards, had to follow curfews. Henriette complied. What choice did she have? The crèche stayed open. The children kept coming. By 1941, the restrictions tightened. Jews couldn't own businesses, couldn't use public transportation, couldn't visit parks or theaters. Henriette watched her world shrink. Then came the Yellow Star. June 1942. All Jews over age 6 had to wear a yellow Star of David, fabric, sewn onto clothing, visible at all times. Henriette sewed stars onto her coat, onto the children's coats. The crèche kept operating. What else could they do? July 1942. The deportations began. The Germans announced a labor mobilization. Young Jewish men and women would be sent to work camps in Germany. Temporary. They'd return after the war. No one believed it, but no one could stop it. The first trains left Westerbork transit camp on July 15th. Destination, Auschwitz. 135 people. Most of them never came back. The Germans needed a collection point, somewhere to gather Jews before transport to Westerbork. They chose the Hollandsche Schouwburg, the theater across from Henriette's crèche. The same building where Jewish families had watched plays and concerts now became a prison. Families arrived, hundreds, then thousands, packed into the theater. No food, no water, no sanitation. They waited, sometimes for days. Then they were loaded onto trains. The theater had one rule. Children under 12 stayed with their parents, but the parents were being deported, sent to camps, sent to death. The children went with them, unless someone could save them. The Dutch resistance made contact with Henriette. September 1942. A man knocked on her door. He didn't give his name. He explained the situation. The theater across the street was a death trap. Children were being deported with their parents. Most wouldn't survive. But there was a gap, a window of opportunity. The crèche was directly across from the theater, connected by a garden. The Germans allowed young children to be taken to the crèche during the day. Fresh air, exercise, then return to their parents at night. What if some of those children didn't return? What if they disappeared? Henriette understood immediately. She was being asked to smuggle children, hide them, get them out of Amsterdam, to safe houses in the countryside. If she was caught, she'd be shot. No trial, no appeal. The Germans executed anyone who helped Jews. She was 66 years old. She could say no, live quietly, survive the war. She said yes. The operation began small, 1 child, then 2, then 5. The process was simple, dangerous, but simple. In the morning, Gestapo officers would escort a group of children from the theater to the crèche. The children would play in the garden, eat lunch, nap. In the afternoon, most returned to the theater, but not all. Some children would be hidden, in closets, in laundry baskets, in supply crates. When the guards weren't looking, resistance workers would smuggle them out, through the garden, over the back wall, into waiting vehicles, driven to addresses outside the city, foster families, monasteries, farms, anywhere the Germans wouldn't look. Between September 1942 and September 1943, Henriette Pimentel helped smuggle over 600 Jewish children out of Amsterdam. 600 lives saved, most of them under age 10, some as young as 6 months. The youngest was Walter Suskind's daughter. Suskind was a German Jew, an administrator at the theater, forced to work for the Germans, making lists, processing deportations. He hated it, but he used his position, altered records, delayed transports, worked with Henriette to save as many children as possible. His own daughter was on a deportation list. 3 years old, Suskind brought her to the crèche. Henriette hid her, got her out, saved her. Suskind never saw her again. He was deported to Auschwitz in 1944. Killed on arrival, his daughter survived. Raised by a Dutch family, she never knew her real name until after the war. The operation required precision, timing, nerves. One mistake, and everyone died. Henriette coordinated everything. She kept records, in code, names, addresses, which children went where. If the Gestapo found those records, hundreds of families would be arrested. She kept them anyway. Someone had to remember. Someone had to know where the children were, so they could be reunited with their families after the war, if their families survived. By early 1943, the Germans were suspicious. Too many children were disappearing. The numbers didn't match. The theater reported 50 children transferred to the crèche. The crèche reported 35 returned. Where were the other 15? Henriette had excuses. Sick children sent to hospital. Children whose parents were released. Administrative errors. The Germans didn't believe her. They started watching. February 1943, a Gestapo officer was assigned to monitor the crèche full-time. He sat in the garden, watched the children, counted them. Morning count, afternoon count, evening count. The smuggling stopped. Too dangerous. For 3 weeks, no children escaped. Then Henriette found a solution. The officer liked coffee, real coffee, not the ersatz garbage everyone else drank. Henriette had connections. Black market, she offered him a deal. Real coffee, fresh, every morning, in exchange for looking the other way. The officer agreed. The smuggling resumed. March 1943, the Gestapo received an anonymous tip. A Dutch collaborator, someone who'd seen children being loaded into vehicles behind the crèche. Someone who wanted the reward money. The Gestapo raided the crèche on March 14, 4:23 a.m. They expected to find children. They found an empty building. Henriette had received a warning. 2 hours earlier, a resistance contact. The Gestapo was coming. Get out. Henriette didn't get out. She sent the children away. 13 of them were still at the crèche that night, waiting for transport to safe houses. She got them out, sent them with resistance workers. Then she stayed. Someone had to be there when the Gestapo arrived. Someone had to protect the operation. If she ran, they'd know she was guilty. They'd hunt her down. Hunt down everyone connected to her. If she stayed, maybe she could lie. Maybe she could survive. The Gestapo found nothing. No children, no evidence, just a pregnant 66-year-old woman making breakfast. They searched for 2 hours, tore apart the apartment, ripped up floorboards, checked the walls, found nothing. The officer in charge stood in the kitchen, stared at Henriette. We know what you're doing. We'll be watching. One mistake. Just one. And you're dead. They left. Henriette sat down, hands shaking. She'd survived, but the operation was over. The Gestapo was watching too closely. She couldn't risk it anymore. She sent word to the resistance. No more children. It's too dangerous. The resistance understood. They'd saved over 600. That would have to be enough. Henriette closed the crèche. May 1943. The Germans had shut down all Jewish institutions. The theater was still operating, still deporting families, but there was no more crèche, no more escape route. Henriette went into hiding. A Dutch family took her in, gave her a room, forged papers, a new identity. She was no longer Henriette Pimentel. She was Anna de Vries, Christian, Dutch, pregnant widow. Her husband killed in a factory accident. She lived quietly, stayed inside, avoided attention, waited for liberation. September 29, 1943. The Gestapo came for her. They'd been watching the house. They knew. Someone had talked. A neighbor, a collaborator, an informant. It didn't matter. They arrested Henriette, took her to Gestapo headquarters, interrogated her for 3 days. Where are the children? What are their names? Who helped you? Where are they hiding? Henriette didn't answer. She knew what happened to people who talked. The Gestapo had methods: torture, sleep deprivation, threats. They told her they'd kill her baby, cut it out of her, let her watch it die. She didn't break. On October 2, 1943, They sent her to Westerbork transit camp, the same camp where all the children she'd saved were supposed to go. She was put on a transport list. Destination: Auschwitz. October 16, 1943. Henriette Pimentel was loaded onto a cattle car. 60 people packed into a space designed for 8. No food, no water, no toilet. The journey took 3 days. When the train arrived at Auschwitz, the doors opened. SS guards shouted orders. Men to the left, women to the right, children to a separate line. Henriette was 8 months pregnant, exhausted, starving. She was sent directly to the gas chamber. No selection, no work assignment. Pregnant women went straight to death. She was murdered on October 19, 1943, age 66, along with a thousand others from her transport. Her body was burned in the crematorium. No grave, no marker, nothing. Of the 600 children Henriette saved, approximately 500 survived the war. They were hidden in Dutch homes, raised by strangers, given new names, new identities. When the war ended, most of them didn't remember their real parents, didn't remember where they came from. The resistance workers who placed them tried to reunite families, but most of the parents were dead, killed at Auschwitz, Sobibor, Treblinka. The children were orphans. Some were reclaimed by surviving relatives, aunts, uncles, grandparents. Others stayed with their foster families, were adopted, grew up Dutch, Christian, never knowing they were Jewish. In 1966, the Dutch government awarded Henriette Pimentel the Righteous Among the Nations honor. Posthumously, the highest honor Israel gives to non-Jews who saved Jewish lives during the Holocaust. Except Henriette wasn't a non-Jew, she was Jewish. The award committee hadn't known. They'd assumed anyone running a rescue operation for Jewish children must be Christian. When they discovered the truth, they debated whether to revoke the award. The rules were clear: Righteous Among the Nations was for non-Jews only. But how could they revoke an award from a woman who died saving 600 children? They made an exception. Henriette Pimentel remains the only Jewish recipient of Righteous Among the Nations. In 2018, the city of Amsterdam unveiled a memorial, a statue of Henriette Pimentel holding a child, located across from the site of the old crèche. The theater is gone, demolished after the war, but the memorial remains. Tourists walk past it every day. Most don't stop. They don't know who she was. In 2020, a researcher discovered something: Henriette's coded records, the lists of children she'd smuggled, names, addresses, dates, hidden in a safe deposit box for 77 years. The researcher published the list, contacted families. Some of the children Henriette saved were still alive, in their 80s now. They'd never known her name, never knew who saved them. One woman, Rachel Winters, age 81, read the article, saw her name on the list, saw the date, September 3, 1942. She was 4 months old when Henriette smuggled her out of the theater. She'd been raised by a Dutch farming family, never knew she was Jewish until she was 30, never knew how she'd been saved. She traveled to Amsterdam, stood in front of Henriette's statue, and wept. Let's count what Henriette Pimentel achieved during the Holocaust. Over 600 Jewish children smuggled to safety, most under age 10, operating for 1 year, September 1942 to September 1943, working alone, at age 66, while pregnant, arrested, tortured, sent to Auschwitz, murdered in a gas chamber, and for 23 years after the war, nobody knew her name, nobody remembered. In 1968, Walter Suskind's daughter published a memoir. She mentioned Henriette, described the crèche, the smuggling operation, the woman who saved her life. That's when people started paying attention. Researchers investigated, interviewed survivors, pieced together the story. Henriette Pimentel went from forgotten to honored, from unknown to righteous among the nations. But it took 25 years, a quarter century after her death, before anyone said thank you. Here's what the story of Henriette Pimentel tells us. Heroism doesn't wait for perfect conditions. In March 1943, Henriette was 66 years old, pregnant, living under occupation, marked for death because she was Jewish. She could have hidden, stayed quiet, focused on her own survival. Instead, she ran a smuggling operation that saved 600 children. She didn't have weapons, didn't have money, didn't have power. She had a crèche across from a theater, and she had the courage to say, "Not these children, not on my watch." For 1 year, she fought the Holocaust one child at a time, smuggling them past guards, hiding them in closets, sending them to safety while their parents went to death. She knew she'd probably die. She did it anyway. October 19, 1943, Henriette Pimentel walked into a gas chamber at Auschwitz. The Nazis thought they'd erased her, thought they'd won. They were wrong, because 500 of those children survived, had families, had children of their own, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Thousands of people alive today because one 66-year-old woman refused to look away. That's not just heroism, that's immortality. That's the Henriette Pimentel story. Not the Righteous Among the Nations award, not the memorial statue. The story is 600 children who lived because one woman decided that saving lives mattered more than saving herself.